Oh!
What is it, Admiral?
I think I saw a spider.
What? Oh, come on, Admiral.
What? Spiders are scary.
No, not that. I mean, you're a high-ranking officer here.
I suppose I am.
And as such, you should probably be aware that there are no bugs of any kind in the New World.
Well, except for...
There are no non-endemic bugs in the New World.
So Vespoids and Hornetars are...
Not counting Vespoids and Hornetar! Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, with everything that Iceborne and Monster Hunter World as a whole have given us, all of the ridiculous, crazy, and wonderful things, one thing that is still awkwardly missing, and blatantly so for any veterans of the series, is proper monster variety. Don't get me wrong, it's getting better. I mean, we literally got RageGaming a few months ago who brought fanged beasts to the New World, but there are still multiple entire categories of monsters that haven't left any sort of mark over here in the New World at all. And that is such a shame because the creatures just get more and more interesting the further away you get from the norm. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my list of the top 5 bug monsters, which I worded very specifically because this list is about the Neopterons and, well, Nerscylla, who technically is the only monster in her category, so today we're being super inclusive of our scary-ass friends.
Good for you!
And so, without further ado, let's begin with...
Number 5.
Still warm.
Vespoid Queen.
And this one, I imagine, is one of the most agreeable things I've just ever said. Like, no offense to you, Vespoid Queen, you did wonderfully for your time and your purpose, but in comparison to what has come after you, you are simply no match. The first insectoid large monster, Vespoid Queen, was relatively simple in design, more built to take advantage of her little annoying helpers than to actually provide much difficulty herself, as the majority of her moveset is just regular Vespoid, but big, and then add a gas spray attack full of pheromones to make her children more attracted to you.
Why did you say it like that?
And the result is a relatively functional yet extremely basic fight. However, being that this was sort of the gateway to obscure large monster skeletons, I still do have a small amount of respect for her existence nonetheless, even if I do think that her fight itself leaves a little bit to be desired at the end of the day.
Number 4.
Homer, you genius! Geronimo!
Conchu.
Anyone who has played a 4th generation Monster Hunter game is likely quite well acquainted with the Conchu, and more than likely not for particularly positive reasons. These little balls of asshole will come out of nowhere and Bolfango your face off, meaning that they are relentlessly aggressive small monsters that will try to flinch you at any point possible. But of course they are even stronger than Bolfango because they can roll right onto a monster and latch onto them, actually becoming protection for your enemy. So not only can they totally obstruct your fight by messing with you personally, but they also can just make the monster harder, like literally harder. And yes, I know what you're saying, what the hell is Conchu doing on this list? It's a small monster. Well, while its stature and categorization may be small, I would describe the monstrousness of Conchu to be anything but. Also, the giant Conchu I'm currently fighting is clearly a large monster, so there's that.
I'll allow it.
And just for the last little nuggets, I love that they serve as prey for Yongut-ku. That's exactly the kind of self-contained ecosystem that makes this game feel so alive. Of course, the relentless monster with an obtusely large and strong beak is the one that eats the fast-moving hard-shelled insects. It is just such a nice, tiny detail that makes both of these creatures feel so much more real to me. And as much as Conchu may not technically be a large monster, it still totally deserves the respect and this spot on this list.
Number 3. Selfless and Selta Queen.
Now, it really isn't fair to split these two up, as sure, it would be quite clear that Selfless would be a rung below the Queen, but on the other hand, the Selta Queen fight pretty much doesn't exist without Selfless, so how can you judge one without the other, especially when judging them against each other? As such, they are one entry here for me, and now that we are down to the last 3, it is actually a pretty super fair matchup too. Like, I absolutely love all of these remaining creatures, from their design to their implementation to their spot in the universe as a whole. Like, the difference between my love for them is mere percentage points apart. That said, Selta Queen is essentially a scorpion helicopter that eats its replaceable subjects to sustain itself.
That's,
That's awesome.
One of her attacks is to literally just drop from the sky and land on you. What an interesting concept. And that, more or less, is just how I would describe the fight as a whole. There aren't a whole lot of tag team fights in this series, not that I would necessarily label this as a tag team, but you do generally fight two monsters at a time in this, and it creates such an unusual and fun atmosphere that I can't help but love these monsters. And as a last remark, this is one of those cases where me being blind on monsters until I fought them was a massive difference too. Like fighting Selfless first and then fighting Selta Queen was probably one of my favorite moments working my way through Generations Ultimate. I never thought I would see a fight like this going through them, nor did I ever expect it to be done this well.
Number 2.
Hi, my name's Lucas. Hi, wee. Oh.
Nerscylla.
And this is where I have to look more at the design of the creature in question than the feeling I first had, as it is a little bit unfair to compare first Selta Queen to first most things, as it has that little extra layer of awesome from fighting the Seltas itself earlier. But I totally accept that on a creature level, Nerscylla is just absolutely amazing. I mean, she wears the skin of a Gypsaros, which is honestly just a service to society. No, I have a soft spot for derpy monsters. I can't do them like that. But, you know, the idea of a monster wearing another monster's skin is pretty neat. No, Valhazak, I am not talking about you. On top of this, it's a spider monster, which makes her inherently creepier to a large number of people. But Capcom did an undeniably amazing job of just really leaning into that creepy factor here, too. I mean, she can web you up so you are literally helpless as she comes to kill you, which is terrifying. And don't even get me started on those big-ass pincers she pulls out. That animation legitimately makes my skin crawl. And, you know, Noxious Poison is a little bit terrifying in its own right, too. And more than any of this, the fight is just genuinely fun. I enjoy seeing her every time that I do see her, and I definitely am sad that she isn't around in the new world. But hey, we can always dream, right?
Number 1. Ahtal Ka.
And this one is just unfair, really. There is no real world in which Ahtal Ka should be listed as a Neopteron. She is 100% in the Elder Dragon category to me, so I guess Capcom and I will have to disagree on that one. However, that does mean, for the purposes of this list, she counts. And oh boy does she count hard. From the very moment that you see her standing alone in the middle of this wide open, desolate landscape, just this golden mantis creature, perfectly symmetrical, beautiful colors and patterns, and then you fight her. And as it starts, the fight matches her look. She uses her unusual shape in interesting ways, and her hand-like tail is particularly effective. All of her movements are incredibly graceful, and she pulls out this golden silk webbing that just looks amazing. And of course, she uses it to hold up water wheels and dragonators and fling them around at you. And it's just one of the most simultaneously blood-pumping and hilarious things at the same time. It's fantastic. And that is before she even pulls out Adil Nesto, which is essentially the visual antithesis of Ahtal Ka herself. Rugged, rusty, pulled together from whatever bits of scrap metal she could find. Yet at the same time, you can't help but think to yourself how damn impressive it is that a monster could put together something like this. She's essentially Monster Iron Man. The fight itself can feel a touch stale occasionally, mostly because the mechanized portion of the fight are just do the same thing over and over until you win, but I can't really let that take too much away from her here, as the rest of the fight and her concept and design as a whole is just absolutely stellar. And as such, there is no way in my mind that this list ends with a different monster at the top. Alright everyone, that was the top 5 best list. Now for the top 5 worst. Coming in at
Number 5.
Ahtal Ka!
And at number 4.
Nerscylla! The joke is that there were only 5 monsters that could even be on this list. I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been my list of the top 5 insect-ish monsters in Monster Hunter. Do you agree with my list? What would you change? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love. So let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or important news about the kingdom Animalia. Rage, Continent, Hollow, we're all here talking about the things you want to hear. So if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.